Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Chinnu. Welcome to the Bookmark. Bookmark is a series of classes that helps you to add on your preparations for various competitive examinations. Today I'm dealing with a very interesting topic and it is about the national parks in India. We know that the animals, birds and plants forms the wide diverse culture of a country. India has the highest animal wealth in the world and let's see how they are protected. Here, about the national parks, I am giving some definitions, the law regarding it, the conservation, by whom and how many national parks in India, its state-wise, and its peculiarities. What are national parks? The national parks are the areas generated and set up by the Government of India. That means the sole authority is by the Government of India. For what? It is for the protection and the conservation of its biodiversity. The national parks are in situ conservation. There are two types of conservations. They are the in situ conservation and the ex situ conservation. In situ conservation means the conservation of the ecosystem, its maintenance and recovery of the viable population in its natural surroundings. That means they are protected in its place. While the ex situ conservation describes about the conservation in which the animal that has been moved, for example, botanical gardens and zoos. Next, about the law behind it. The Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 provides the protection of animals, birds, and plants with a view to ensure the ecological and environmental security of the country. The Act defines 5 types of protected areas. Here, the national parks comes under this. National Park is an area which is strictly reserved for the betterment of wildlife and its biodiversity. The activities like poaching, hunting, cultivation, all these are not permitted. That means they are banned. In these parks, even the private ownership rights are not allowed. That means all the authorities are only to the government. Their boundaries are well marked. Here we may have a doubt regarding the wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. What are the differences? The wildlife sanctuary is a natural habitat that is owned by the government or private agency that safeguards a particular species of birds or animals. While the national park are the protected areas which are established by the government to conserve the wildlife. Less restrictions are there in wildlife sanctuaries, but more and highly restricted are in case of national parks. It is open to public in wildlife sanctuaries, but it is not access to the people in national parks. The boundaries are not fixed in wildlife sanctuaries, but we have a fixed by legislations in case of national parks. The human activities are allowed in wildlife sanctuaries, but these are not allowed in the national parks. The Article 36A in Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 deals with the declaration and management of conservation. The Act has 6 schedules with varying degrees of protection for different kinds of animals and plants. The national parks are IUCN Category 2 protected areas. It is very important. The national parks comes under the IUCN 2 category protected areas. And these areas are established by the state as well as the center. And all these comprise about 1.33% of India's total surface area. The national parks have more restrictions than the wildlife sanctuaries that we have discussed earlier. A national park is defined by the state government by notification. It is very, very important to note that a national park is defined by the state government by a notification. And the state government can fix and alter the boundaries of the national parks with prior consultation and approval with the National Board of Wildlife. That is important, with the National Board of Wildlife. Then we shall deal with the 5 national parks till 1970. There were 5 national parks till 1970 and they are Jim Corbett National Park in Uttarakhand and it was established in 1936. Kanha National Park in Madhya Pradesh, Tadoba National Park in Maharashtra, Madhav National Park in Madhya Pradesh and Bandhavgarh National Park in Madhya Pradesh. These are the these are the different national parks we had till 1970. Next, we shall discuss about the constitutional provisions that help to formation or that lead to the formation of the national parks, its conservations, etc. The national parks means an area declared whether under the section 35 or under section 38 or whether deemed under a subsection 3 of section 66 to be declared as a national park. The Article 51A(g), it shall be the duty of every citizen to protect and improve the natural environment, including the forest and wildlife. And so, we the citizens of India are very much obliged to protect all these, our country's natural wealth. The Article 48A, it comes under the DPSP, that says The state shall endeavour to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. National park means an area declared whether under section 35 or under section 38. It has to be kept in mind. Let's see about the authorities. The Ministry is of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The State Board of Wildlife. The state governments are responsible for the constitution of the State Board of Wildlife and Chief Minister is the chairperson. That is about the state. And National Board for Wildlife. It is a central government constitutes this and the Honorable Prime Minister is the chairperson. The Minister in charge of Forest and Wildlife as a vice chairperson. Next is the Chief Wildlife Warden. Is a statutory authority under the Section 4 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. It empowers the state government to exercise complete administrative control over the protected areas. And so these are the authorities behind this. Let's see about the functions. What the duties of them? What are the functions and its duties? The duty of them to promote and conservation and development of wildlife and forest. It framing policies and advising the central as well as the state government. That means both are needed on means of promoting the wildlife conservation and effectively controlling the poaching. We know that the poaching in nowadays a serious threat to the animal wealth. They are being illegally traded or they are illegally hunted for their skin, their teeth, etc. No. So all these illegal trade of wildlife and its products. So it should be productively under control, making recommendations on setting up of and management of national parks, sanctuaries and other protected areas and on matters related to the restriction of activities, reviewing and marking the progress of such areas. Then not only that but also preparing and publishing the status report on wildlife at least twice a year, and there is also a standing committee of the national board, and this committee is chaired by the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and this committee is there for the approval of the projects in the protected areas. And so these are the various functions and duties of all the authorities that we have discussed earlier. Fine. Next we are going to have an overview of the national parks. We know that there are 106 existing national parks in India, and it is about 1.35% of the geographical area of the country, and this data is based on the National Wildlife Database. Let's see some peculiarities. The oldest national park of our country is Haley National Park. It is in Uttarakhand and it was established in 1936. It was done to protect the endangered tigers. Now it is known as the Jim Corbett National Park. It is also Asia's first national park. The maximum number of national parks in Madhya Pradesh, 12, and then second comes the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The smallest national park, it is the South Button National Park in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The only floating national park is Kebul Lamjawo National Park in Manipur. The first marine national park in India is in Gulf of Kutch. The largest national park is Hemis National Park and it is a high altitude national park in Ladakh. The national parks are which included in 2021 are Dahing Paktai and Raimona National Parks. Next, we are dealing with some more additional points in terms of the protection, how it is classified. Prime importance to the national parks, then comes the wildlife sanctuaries, then the reserved forest, and then comes the protected areas. As of June 2021, there were 993 notified protected areas. The national parks, 106. It constitutes about 1.33% covering the country. The wildlife sanctuaries, it is 566 which constitutes 3.72% of the country, and conservation reserves 97 which constitutes 0.14% of the country, and protected areas 993 which constitutes 5.59% of the country. These are the overall view. Next we deals with the marine national parks. There are 6 marine national parks. The first one, Gahirmada in Odisha. It is the biggest nesting ground for the olive ridley turtles in the world. And next, Gulf of Kutch in Gujarat. It is the largest and the first marine national park. Rani Jhansi Marine National Park in Andaman and Nicobar. Gulf of Mannar in Tamil Nadu. Dugong, a vulnerable marine mammal, is found here. Mahatma Gandhi Marine National Park in Andaman and Nicobar, the important breeding ground for turtles also. Malwan Marine National Park in Maharashtra. It is also a flamingo sanctuary. Next, we are going to deal with the national parks in various states. The first, according to the alphabetical order, I have taken Andhra Pradesh. In Andhra Pradesh, they have 3 national parks. They are the Pabikonda National Park, Rajiv Gandhi National Park, Sri Venkateshwara National Park. The first one is Sri Venkateshwara National Park. It was established in 1989 with an area of 353 kilometers square. The first national park of Andhra Pradesh, and it was named after Lord Venkateshwara. It is a national park as well as the biosphere reserve of Andhra Pradesh. The thing we have to be noted here is it is both the national park as well as the biosphere reserve. And this national park is a part of Eastern Ghats, and that becomes a part of Seshachalam Hills. The vegetation, it is a mix of dry deciduous and moist deciduous. Here we can see red sanders. This national park is home to globally threatened yellow-throated bulbul, critically endangered oriental white-backed vulture, and Indian golden geckos discovered here in 1985. And these are the important points which you have to keep in mind about this particular Sri Venkateshwara National Park. Next is the Rajiv Gandhi National Park, and it was established in 2005 with an area 2.40 kilometers square. It is also known as the Rameshwaram National Park. The vegetation here is dry deciduous. It is home to reptilian fauna, burrowing snakes like Russells. Then we can see scorpions, crickets, grasshoppers, and a dense eucalyptus forest is also seen. The third and the last one of Andhra Pradesh is Pabikonda National Park, and it was established in 2008 with an area of 1012.86 km square. Pabikonda Wildlife Sanctuary is established in 1978 and it was upgraded to a national park in 2008. Here we can see the Godavari River, and it bisects the Pabikonda National Park into two, that is northern and the southern halves. The vegetation we can found here is tropical mixed moist deciduous, semi-evergreen and dry deciduous. The fauna is unique dwarf breed of god, that is Kanju Megha, and also the leopard cats. The keystone species is gaur. Of the 13 protected areas in Andhra Pradesh, leopard cat has sighted only in these national parks. In this image we can see the national animal of India. And you know what's national animal of India? It is the Royal Bengal tiger, isn't it? The national animal, and its scientific name is Panthera tigris, isn't it? And it's conferred its status on April 1973. That was on the Project Tiger, and this Project Tiger was first launched in Uttarakhand, that is on in Jim Corbett National Park, isn't it? And this tiger, it is often represented as an emblematic representation of a country's wealth. And for additional information, this IUCN Red List, it comes under the endangered category. Next, going to Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh is blessed with the two national parks. And the first one is the Mauling National Park, and the second is with the Namdapha National Park. The Mauling National Park is established in the year 1986. It has an area of 483 kilometers square, and the name was derived from the peak named Mauling. The vegetation is mixed, and the river Siang passes through it. It is home to the ornamental plant species like foxtail and orchids. A very rich bird diversity can be seen here. Vulnerable chestnut-breasted partridge is found here. In the case of fauna, 3 varieties of god, takin, coral and sirau are found here. The second of Arunachal Pradesh is Namdapha National Park. It is surrounded with many large mountains and large water bodies. Important among them are Nuwa Dahin, Diban and Namdapha rivers. The Namdapha National Park is famous for, or the main peculiarity is the only park in India to have 4 big cat species. They are leopard, tiger, clouded leopard and snow leopard. Around 96 mammal species that are found here, 29 species are listed on the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. And it also forms a part of Indo-Myanmar biodiversity hotspot. And Namdapha flying squirrel, arboreal and nocturnal, restricted to a single valley in the Namdapha Tiger Reserve.